Okay. Good afternoon. The GEORG is the acronym for this geothermal engineering, integrating mitigation of induced seismicity in reservoirs. And as it indicates, it focuses on induced seismicity and seismic hazard associated with the induced seismicity. What I'm going to talk about is about the GEORG project and the background and about injection in Iceland. But first, some concepts. We have here the definition. This is from the Protocol of Addressing Induced Seismicity, which is published by the US Department of Energy. And these are the definitions which they use, I think are quite good. And we will be discussing enhanced geothermal systems. And those are defined as activities undertaken to increase the permeability in a targeted subsurface volume via injecting and withdrawing fluids into and from the rock formations, just to extract geothermal energy for the rock. This is similar to what used to be called, what was it, hot dry rock, something like that. And then we have induced seismic event, which is a seismic event that is induced by man-made activities, such as fluid injection, reservoir impoundment, mining, and other activities. And then we have triggered seismic event. It's a seismic event that is the result of a failure along a pre-existing zone of weakness. It's a fault that is already critically stressed and is pushed to failure by a stress perturbation from natural or man-made activities. So actually a triggered seismic event is a subset of induced seismic events. When enhanced geothermal systems are being developed, very high pressures are used, up to, for example, in Basel, up to 300 bars, which is far above the strength, or at least the tensile strength of rock. Okay. The GEORG started in 2010, and is funded by the European Commission and is within this FP7. ESOR participation is supported by GEORG, and the specific goals were to understand why seismicity is induced in some cases but not in others, to assess the probability of seismic hazard depending on the geological setting and geographical locations. And one important thing is to propose a licensing and monitoring guidelines for local authorities, including a definition acceptable for ground motion levels. And finally, to investigate strategies for soft simulation, that is to achieve this, what you want without producing earthquakes that causes some significant damage or hazard, or risk, rather. Okay. And to address these objectives, the four main topics were identified. I have to say were because GEORG has actually ended. It is an analysis of induced seismicity, which means location, magnitude distribution, time involvement, and source information. And then understanding the geomechanics and processes, which actually means going really into the matter, make laboratory experiments of rock specimens, numerical modeling of fissures and faults and structures with an ensemble of fissures and faults. Consequences, which is really hazard assessment and strategies for mitigation. And there were 13 partners, and the project was coordinated by Geoforschungszentrum in Potsdam. It was broken into 7 work packets. Work packets 3, 4, 5, and 6 are basically the topics I mentioned before. Then in addition, we had the project management by the GFZ, a compilation of induced seismicity data from geothermal sites, and we were responsible for that. And then we had the dissemination. If we look into this work package 2, then one task was the selection of sites for further analysis. These are the sites that were actually, there was some investigation carried on, from an originally about 3 times longer list. Then we had to install a metadatabase for induced seismicity and for literature of induced seismicity. And then if you look at the Icelandic interest, then it is in general to study seismicity in Icelandic geothermal systems. And if you look at what was in the goals of GEISIR, it was to propose the licensing and monitoring guidelines for local authorities. And it is possible that these guidelines can become a recommendation from the European Commission. So it was quite important that our voice, or shall we say our special interests and circumstances were, shall we say, it was taken notice of our interest in this. And at the time of the start of the GEISIR, induced activity was not considered an issue here in Iceland, which has drastically changed. And then if we go to the background of GEISIR, then European leaders agreed to have that 20% of overall energy needs would be from renewable sources, and geothermal energy would play an important role in the future energy mix. So it's attractive as a base load energy supply, but at the same time promising ETS geothermal projects were jeopardized by the problem of induced seismicity, especially in Sulsuforniti or at Basel. So the GEISIR is a kind of response to these things. And the aim was to contribute to the improvement of the concept of enhanced geothermal systems by addressing the need to investigate the role of induced seismicity. And one thing is that the seismicity is also has a positive side, which is that it tells you something about the nature of the reservoir. The seismicity tell you in a way where the fluid pathways or at least pressure pathways, but at the same time it creates a potential seismic hazard. These are the location of the injection sites in Europe. The red circles are injections into crystalline basement, and the diamonds are injections into sedimentary rocks. There has been observed induced seismicity more or less in all the cases where injections are into crystalline basement. It has not been very serious except for Basel, Suls, and then we see here Landau, which is actually put there in as a sedimentary. It is actually shall we say close to the, what do you call it? There is it's close to where the crystal embodiment starts. Below, as a background, you see the seismic hazard map of Europe with the high seismic hazards in Italy and in east of the Adria Ocean, so to say, Croatia, and in Iceland. I just take one example here from Basel. The blue, also the uppermost part of the picture shows in blue the pressure, the injection pressure in the borehole, going from, and the scale is on the right, and we see that the injection pressure goes from 0 up to about 300 bars on the 8th of December. At the same time, we see in gray noticed earthquakes and in red located earthquakes. And on the figure below, we see the magnitude of the larger events. And but we see here that when this event occurred here, they decreased the injection rate, and at this time, and then when this event occurred, which was the largest event, 3.4. I think they called it bleeded off the drill hole. I think it is just open the drill hole. So if you look at it this is for 2006, 2007, and 2008, and you see here that long time after this project had stopped, there were significant. There were large earthquakes the next 3 months. And some results, so the basic knowledge is of course also this background seismic activity before you start a project like this, and knowledge of tectonics and geology and things like that. But there are some results. I just took some results from the geyser. The final results, the seismicity propagates gradually away from the injection well, which is something we would expect as a pressure diffusion. Stress drops in individual earthquakes is smaller close to the injection well than farther away. Repeated stimulation show a Kaiser effect. But Kaiser effect is something, if you take, for example, a sample and you press it, you get some micro earthquakes in the sample. If you release it and press it again, nothing happens until you have reached the same pressure as before, same stress within the sample. Injection rate and injected volume are very important. The effect of Coulomb stress changes increases proportionally as you move away from the injection well. The last two things that are related to temperature effects, and it seems to be that if you have a large structure, the temperature effects are not important. But if you have a blocky system, if you have a ground which is divided by fissures and fractures with different orientations, then local thermoelastic effects can be important. And it is more likely that you have have induced seismicity if there is a high potential seismic hazard. And this proposed probabilistic induced seismicity hazard assessment method, which was developed in GESI, combines the induced seismicity forecast to standard hazard assessments to generate a time-dependent hazard curves. So it is in a way a mixture of deterministic and stochastic process. Now if you look at Iceland, there are some indications for seismicity associated with extraction of fluid or pressure decrease in a reservoir. Seismicity is associated with injection in many cases. And just added there that ISOR is participating in other work groups or projects which are addressing this problem, IPGD and GEA. These are the locations in Iceland where we have injections. We have observed induced seismicity in Svartsengi, Húsmúli, Gráhnjúkar, and Krafla. On Reykjanes and in Laugaland, no induced seismicity was or has been observed, although it was quite well monitored. Nesjavellir and Laugaland in Holtum are quite well monitored, but this has not been investigated. And Stykkishólmur and Reyðarfjörður, there is no data on that. So I wanted to jump now to the Húsmúli, which we are working on presently. And we had there was the full-scale injection started in Húsmúli in the beginning of September 2011. And it has been reduced now, and the old injection site, Gráhnjúkar, is partly in use now, as far as I know. We know that the Húsmúli is on the border of the active zones or plate boundaries. There was an intense storm with the largest earthquakes of 4 of them were over 3, and the largest one was 3.8. Reykjavík Energy established a specialist group to address the problem, and a report was published in September 2012. But earthquake swarms were associated with the drilling and testing of most of the injection boreholes. And when HN17, also the injection borehole number 17, was drilled, ISOR installed a temporary seismic network, and there were other temporary networks in operation at this time, plus data from the SIL system was available. So it was quite dense network altogether. And in 1993 to 98, there was an intense swarm in the Hengill area. And during that time, Húsmúli was also active. The episode ended with 2 large earthquakes, and similar episodes occurred in 1910 and 1950. So it seemed to be some kind of recurrence period around 40 years. On this plot we see Gráhnjúkar and the seismic swarm here associated with that. We have the power station and the injection site in Húsmúli, and the seismic swarms in Húsmúli, which is partly from the injection, or half of it is from the injection, after the injection started. And if you look here at the seismic activity from 1995 until 2013, So this is the later part of this seismic swarm, which ended here somewhere. And then the drilling started approximately here. And we see, and so some of these swarms, we have here magnitude and time, of course. This is the full-scale injections swarm here. Here we have a number per day and the same period, and it basically shows the same thing. Now here we have the power station, and these are the injection wells, and this is the HN17 here, and here we have HN12 and HN16, which was injection into them while HN17 was being drilled. And if you look at the similar picture as before, but shorter time scale, the green things are periods when there was drilling. So we see that most of the swarms are associated with drillings. And here we have the full-scale injection, and what is interesting to see is how that already in 2013, the activity has decreased significantly, but that may partly be due to the fact that some of the injection is in Gráunúkar. Okay. And these data are from the SIL catalog. But if you look at the injection history of HN17, and it was drilled from 7th of February to 22nd of February 2011, and it is 2,200 meters deep. At the same time, the injection was into HN12 and HN16, which are very close to the HN17. And it was 75 liters per second into each. So altogether, there were 150 liters per second. 11th of February, at 11:05, there was a total circulation loss. Circulation loss means that the drilling fluid doesn't get up to the surface again, so it goes into the ground. And this was at least 60 liters per second. So altogether, there was injection into the area of 210 liters. Then there were further injections, further tests. So this figure is from the report I mentioned before, and we have here the time and magnitude, and these are the events from the meteorological office. And we see here that when the circulation loss occurs, there's this large swarm, and similarly as they say, as when the bottom feeders are cut. The blue line is the cumulative number of earthquakes. Altogether, there were 270 events recorded by the SIL network. But you have to bear in mind, if this is cutting, if this circulation loss occurs at 1,300 meters, and there is no water come up to the surface, the pressure, overpressure, is approximately 20 bars, maximum 20 bars, because the water level is at 200 meters. So it's a maximum number. And here we have, these are results from the local network, and we have only analyzed this part a little in detail. and this one a little bit also. And you see the events are from surface down to approximately 3 kilometers depth. So this is sea level here. And if you look at this in more detail, this is the 11th of February at 10 o'clock, 12, 14, etc. And here is the circulation loss at this depth. Then we see half an hour later we have the earthquake swarm starts and more or less, and they are occurring almost from the surface and down to 2 kilometers depth. And gradually they deepen and seem to level out here. And we can see that we can split this into 3 groups really. This is something which we are working on, and already I think we can locate about 10 times more earthquakes during this period than we have here. So we have just scratched the surface. So these are the locations. So this is the whole swarm, and this is the location of where the drill was when the circulation loss occurred. And we see that the first half hour they're quite spread, the events, and then from 12:25 to 16 they are in this place, and then they jump to this area. And this is the full-scale injection. These are relocated events by Gunnar Guðmundsson. And in this case, there was 8 bars as a wellhead pressure. So altogether, it was 28 bars approximately at the bottom of the hole. Overpressure. And what we see basically here is the time scale. And what you see actually is that it's more or less moves away from the injection site, but there are of course very clear fractures. And finally, this is also from a report I mentioned. What you see here is that we see the injection rate as a blue line there, and which goes from 0 up to 500 in a week's time, and we see the seismic activity below. And what is interesting here is that nothing happens until you overstep the former value of injection rate actually at 210 liters. There is no seismic activity until you overstep this value, which indicates this Kaiser effect I was mentioning. And secondly, we see that the largest earthquakes here occurring at this time occur at the time when we have a large fluctuation in the injection rate. So it is important to keep the injection rate as steady as possible if we want to possibly avoid earthquakes. And finally, we see wellhead pressure is well below is low, and the earthquakes are triggered. They are definitely triggered. They are not, or possibly caused by some thermoelastic processes. In high temperature areas which are located in volcanic centers, the events are small and indicate a weak crust. We see that in Krafla, for example, where we have some induced events, but they are very small. And areas in and around the sea zones or the plate boundaries are able to produce large events. But the activity decreases rapidly with continued injection, as in Húsmúli. Okay, thank you.